All right, so now I would like to cover chapter 7 of the Ascensionist Teachings. So the first concept that we want to break down is the concept of category collapse and infinite regress. So basically my point is that every category depends on its opposite for its identity. And because a category is dependent on its opposite, um, it is also inseparable from its opposite. So a category is dependent on and therefore inseparable from its opposite. Therefore, a category is actually identical to its opposite. So let's read this summary. Every category depends on its opposite for its identity. A category without an opposite cannot be conceived and would lack identity entirely. Therefore, every category is inseparable from its opposite, which means it is part of its opposite, which means it is identical to its opposite. Now, sorry, I was just checking the recording. So basically, everything is its own opposite. So the point is that categories are they're mutable, they're unstable, and they don't really exist. Categories are not real. Reality isn't even real. And then infinite regress, which is kind of related to category collapse. So if we take the formal axiom that A equals A, this is the law of identity, then we also know that A is the equivalent to the double negation of A. So A is the same as the opposite of itself. So take any category, the opposite of that opposite category would be logically the equivalent of that category in informal logic. But this actually leads to an infinite regress. So A equals negative, negative, negative. So A equals double negation of A equals quadruple negation of A equals, I don't know what the word for this is, but A equals 6 negations of A. Eventually, you basically realize that every category is actually an infinite chain of negations when pushed to the logical conclusions. So really, categories have infinite potential. Reality has infinite potential. If you want to begin with formal logic, of course, I'm not saying this is necessarily true, but this is just a way of thinking about categories that that will make you treat them as instruments and as something, like not fixed, not axiomatic. So categories are not axiomatic. They serve a higher purpose. You shouldn't be worshiping the truth. You should use the truth as a tool. So the truth should be a tool rather than a master. So yeah, we should not serve ideas. Ideas should serve us. The only axiom is elevatum. Without the purpose of endless elevation, nothing matters. So because categories contradict themselves, and because categories aren't actually real, you don't want to be fixed into any category. You don't want it to be encapsulated within any box. You want to transcend all categories. You want to transcend and be greater than existence. You want to elevate. So I mentioned that in Ascensionism, the most important principle is elevatum. Nothing can be placed above elevatum. So I also want to notice that when you change that every action involves a trade-off. So if you're choosing between vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, by picking chocolate ice cream, you're foregoing vanilla ice cream. So you have to make a choice. Do you aim for elevation? Do you aim for greater magnificence? Or do you aim for stagnation? Well, the cost of magnificence, the cost of achieving greatness is that you have to sacrifice your comfort. And so this is not, and so you can think of it as a sacrifice, but it's also a foundation. So the sacrifice for your comfort, that's a foundation for greater elevation. That's how you achieve greater excellence, is by putting aside the inferior version of yourself and putting aside what you could have been and using that as a stepping stone for something greater. So here's the metaphor. When you demolish an old house to build a more brilliant one, the rubble becomes the foundation. When you use raw materials to build a rocket, the materials are not lost as materials, but present as the rocket. So when you think about it, you're sort of like metamorphizing raw materials into something greater. That is the Ascensionist project. So everything unnecessary to elevation must be sacrificed for the sake of elevation. So yeah, the listener who is afraid of what Ascensionism asks them to give up is told that giving up and building up are the same act viewed from different angles. So yes, okay, when you're sacrificing something, you're actually building something. So like you can, when you're building a ladder and you're putting the rungs on the ladder, or when you're building a staircase and you're putting the bricks into place for the staircase. Yes, by using your bricks, by yes, the bricks are an expenditure. By using a brick, you no longer have the brick, but it is in service of a staircase, and therefore, an act of sacrifice is an act of foundation building. It's an act of creation. A sacrifice is a creation, and it needs to serve a higher purpose. So, I also mentioned that there are some people who think that basically love is the fundamental mover of the universe. It's that as long as you have love, everything will be all right. Problem is that love in itself will not prevent people who hate you from obliterating you. So my point is that yes, love is morally important. I would even say it's a necessity, but love alone cannot protect you from evil people. Love is a moral necessity. Love alone cannot protect the ambitions of the Ascensionist revolution. So now in 1.3, I talk about the banality of human pride. So there are people who feel very proud of being humans, and in this way, you can say they are panhumanists in that they worship the human form. I would say that it's actually very strange, and I would say it's irrational to be proud of being human in itself. So it's like being proud of, breathing oxygen. It's like being proud of having legs. Like being proud of having eyes, being proud of having ears. Like this is not like, why are you proud of this? This is just a state of nature, right? You want to be more than merely human. You want to transcend humanity to become something greater. That's what Nietzsche said. You need to become Superman. Don't just be a mediocre human. Right? Ascensionists seek to be legendary beyond human comprehension. Nietzsche praised the emergence of the Superman, but even the Superman is just one stage on the quest to transcend the cosmological order itself. So even being Superman is not enough. You need to be greater than Superman. You need to transcend all existence and realize that every state of existence is just a stepping stone for something greater. So 1.4 talks about the shadow elite. So basically, the visible people in power, like Trump, Mark Carney, I don't know, the president of Germany, I don't know, like whoever, Macron, that's the French president, right? So the people who you think are in power aren't actually in charge. And even billionaires like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? They're not the ones really in financial power. The people who are actually in power are people like Jeffrey Epstein or whoever Jeffrey Epstein is working for. So why was Jeffrey Epstein above international law? Probably because he was backed by satanic groups. It's probably because he was backed by secret forces that most people simply cannot understand, like the Rothschild banking family, as an example. Like Jeffrey Epstein had clear connections to the Rothschilds. It's very likely that this is where his power came from. Like the fact that he can just avert the law internationally and nationally for so long as he did, like it's clear that the way you think power works is not actually how it works. But just to be clear, I'm not discriminating against any groups. I am simply presenting this information for educational and entertainment purposes, and all of this is just speculation. So here's some more speculation. Here's a possibility, and this narrative is fictional, but it's just to point out how the shadow elites actually work, right? Because there's two different kinds of power. There's nominal power and there's actual power. Nominal power is people who pretend they have power. So like if you're a government official, if you're a diplomat, if you're a president, if you're part of, if you're a sitting committee member of a regulatory body, you don't actually have power. People with actual power: Jeffrey Epstein, the Rothschild banking family, Freemasons, Illuminati, right? Satanic people. Those are the people with actual power. The people who you think have power, the people who are in public vision, probably don't have power. Anyways, this is just a fictional narrative, and this is just pure speculation. Now, I want to note that all of these ideas, all of this conspiracy, all of this is from Professor Jiang. I can take no responsibility for these ideas. I mean, I can take no credit for these ideas. These ideas are not mine. They are entirely borrowed from Professor Jiang, and I think he would be fine with this. I mean, he wants these ideas to be shit, but this is just something like this narrative is just to demonstrate how the shadow elites could work, just for the purpose of illustration. So, why would the U.S. go to war with Iran? If you think Donald Trump is actually in charge of America, you're simply delusional, because a guy like Donald Trump, all he cares about is the stock market. All he cares about is economics and looking good on TV. Why would he go for a war in Iran? It doesn't really make sense unless you realize that he's a puppet of higher order powers, right? He's a puppet of interests that don't really serve America per se. And so, yeah. So it's like, okay, I think it's clear who's actually in charge. But anyways, this is all speculation. And this is all for educational entertainment purposes. And please note that we should not discriminate against anyone. We should never advocate violence. I think starting war is immoral, at least generally speaking. Like, anyways, so U.S. goes to war with Iran. There's a prolonged conflict, and then eventually there's internal. There's a civil war in America. Now think about this, right? If America ever imposes a draft, then there'll probably be a civil war. I mean, it's a possibility, at least. So let's say the U.S. loses the Iran war, okay? They will withdraw from the Middle East, and then what will happen is that Israel becomes the most powerful nation in the Middle East. Now, this is all speculation. I'm not saying this will happen. This is just a possibility. Anyways, so let's say Europe will also have civil conflicts because conscription is not going to be popular. Like, why are you dying for foreign interests? Like, what is the point? So anyways, there's a global energy disruption, and so Europe becomes politically irrelevant. So Israel evades a bunch of Middle Eastern countries, and Russia invades northern Turkey. Turkey gets partitioned. So Japan needs to remilitarize because otherwise they'll run out of oil. Just mass death. Let's say there's only 2 billion people. So like basically 5 billion people or like 6 billion people are just going to die, right? There's going to be a great leap forward, but it's going to be like globalized. And then so Greater Israel is going to emerge, and they're going to use Palantir for a surveillance state, and there's going to be a class of tyrants, and basically everyone else will be slaves. So all of this is from Professor Jiang. None of this is my original thinking, to be clear. All of this, I'm just repurposing Professor Jiang's ideas for the purpose of illustration. So basically, why is all of this happening is because the shadow elites want it to happen. So certain Zionists basically view certain people as greater than others and view certain people as slaves. And so they believe that this project, this political project, this national project will bring about the return of their God. And even Christians also want the world to end because, as I explained in a prior video, that if you destroy the world, then Jesus will return. So therefore, destroying the world is good. And that's messed up. You know, to use religion, to use any system of ideas to justify genocide, that is absolutely terrible. It's a moral atrocity and should not be supported. Anyways, so now 1.5. Okay, so let's see. So basically, I declared a holy war against Satan. I basically say that anyone who supports the government, anyone who supports taxation, anyone who supports central banking can be considered an agent of the Epstein class. They work for Satan. Let's see. So the world must be understood as a 3-tier caste system the Epstein class at the top, the bureaucrats, and then the people. And so the Epstein class are really in power. They use the bureaucrats to control the people. Like the bureaucrats think they're in power, they're actually just puppets of the Epstein class. And because bureaucrats, these they don't have any souls, and they basically just conform and do what they're told. So they're very easy to manipulate, and that's why a secret group of satanic elites can basically control the bureaucracies of the world for their interests. So that's what governments are. Governments are bureaucracies, and so who people think wield the power are the governments, but actually the governments are just doing the bidding for satanic groups. So yeah, now let me see. Let's go to chapter 8.